The idea of Dr. Octopus becoming Spider-Man sounded completely insane. Or Octavius had spent his entire career trying to defeat Peter, so the thought of him actually wearing the Spider-Man suit felt more like fan fiction than a serious prediction. But if you followed writer Dan Slott's run on Amazing Spider-Man, you start to notice little clues that something strange was happening. Otto was dying after years of injuries had finally caught up with him, and he had become obsessed with Spider-Man's body rather than simply trying to kill him. Then there was another detail that fans couldn't ignore. During an earlier fight, Peter and Otto's mind had briefly connected through Otto's network of Octobots, giving the villain access to Peter's brain patterns. Online forums quickly filled with fan theories that Otto wasn't searching for a cure anymore, he was searching for a new body. At the time, everything came crashing together in Amazing Spider-Man issue 700, one of the most shocking Spider-Man comics ever published. Otto successfully swapped minds with Peter, leaving himself in Peter Parker's young, healthy body, while Peter woke up trapped inside Otto's old, dying body. Peter desperately tried to reverse the process before it was too late, but he ran out of time. As Otto's original body finally gave out, Peter used the last moments of their mental connection to force Otto to experience every important memory from his life. Otto felt the pain of losing Uncle Ben, the responsibility that came with Spider-Man's powers, and every sacrifice Peter had made to protect others. Those memories completely changed him. Standing in Peter's body, Otto promised that he would honor Peter's legacy and continue protecting the innocent. Then Peter Parker died, leaving Doc Ock as the one and only Spider-Man. That ending launched the Superior Spider-Man, and Otto immediately proved he had a very different idea of what being a superhero meant. He upgraded Spider-Man's costume with mechanical claws, filled New York with Chinese surveillance spider bots, built advanced technology to fight crime, and even earned Peter a doctorate because he couldn't stand the idea of being seen as anything less than brilliant. Crime rates dropped dramatically under his watch, but his methods often crossed lines Peter never would. He even killed the villain Massacre without hesitation, leaving heroes like the Avengers questioning whether Spider-Man had completely changed. But of course, Peter Parker wasn't gone forever. Dan Slott had secretly left behind a tiny fragment of Peter's consciousness buried deep inside his own mind, silently watching everything Otto did. As the Green Goblin launched one final attack on New York, Otto slowly realized that all of his intelligence couldn't replace Peter's heart. He understood that Peter inspired people in ways he never could, and in one of the most emotional moments of the series, Otto willingly erased his own consciousness, sacrificing himself so Peter could return and save the city. Looking back, the fan theory turned out to be completely right. Doc Ock really did become Spider-Man. Even more surprising, he became a genuine hero for a while, making the Superior Spider-Man one of the boldest and most memorable chapters in Spider-Man history. Doctor Doom becoming a hero used to sound like one of those fan theories that people throw around just for fun. After all, Victor Von Doom had spent decades building a reputation as one of Marvel's greatest villains. He constantly battled the Fantastic Four, tried conquering the world more times than anyone could count, and believed he was smarter than every hero on Earth. But fans always pointed to one interesting detail about Doom: he never saw himself as evil. In his own mind, everything he did was for the greater good. He genuinely believed the world would be a better place if he ruled it. That idea made some readers wonder if Doom could ever become a real hero if someone gave him the chance. The biggest piece of evidence came all the way back in What If, issue 22 from 1980, where Marvel explored an alternate timeline that completely changed Victor's life. So while studying in college alongside Reed, Victor built a machine that he hoped would let him enter Hell and rescue the soul of his mother, Cynthia. Reed noticed a mistake in Victor's calculations and warned him that the machine wasn't safe, but Victor's pride got in the way. He ignored the warning, activated the machine anyway, and it exploded in his face, leaving him badly scarred and filling him with hatred for Reed. In the alternate timeline though, Victor did something almost unthinkable. He actually listened. Reed corrected the calculations. The machine worked perfectly, and Victor managed to contact the Netherworld without the disaster ever happening. He left college on good terms with Reed instead of becoming his lifelong enemy. Later, when he trained with the monks in Tibet, they crafted him a magnificent suit of golden armor instead of the cold iron mask everyone recognizes. Victor even rescued his mother's soul from hell and returned to Latveria as a wise and beloved king, eventually marrying his childhood love, Valeria. Sadly, the happy ending didn't last. Mephisto demanded another soul in exchange for Cynthia's freedom, forcing Victor to choose between sacrificing himself or sacrificing Valeria. His pride won once again, convincing him that the world needed his genius too much to lose him. Valeria was dragged into hell, leaving Victor trapped in a heartbreaking cycle where he challenged Mephisto every year in the hope of saving the woman he loved. For years, that story remained nothing more than an interesting alternate reality. That prediction slowly started becoming reality during the 2010s. After suffering severe brain damage, Doom found himself needing help from an unlikely source: Reed Richards' incredibly gifted daughter, Valeria Richards. She agreed to restore his mind on one condition: he had to join Reed's Future Foundation and help save the world. And instead of plotting against the Fantastic Four, Doom actually worked beside them. A few years later, during the Axis storyline, a magical inversion spell completely flipped his morality. Victor suddenly became compassionate, caring, and genuinely devoted to protecting innocent people. He even cried over the terrible things he had done in the past, showing a level of remorse that we had never seen before. The biggest moment finally arrived in 2016 after Secret Wars and Civil War II. Reed had restored Victor's face, removing the scars that had haunted him for years. Around the same time, Tony Stark was left in a coma, leaving the world without Iron Man. So what did Dr. Doom do? He surprised everyone by deciding to continue Tony's mission. Wearing his own silver and green Iron Man armor, he became the infamous Iron Man, flying around the world, stopping criminals, and trying to earn people's trust. Even the Avengers found themselves working alongside the man they had spent years fighting. It felt like Marvel had finally brought that old fan theory to life. The version of Doom that readers had imagined for decades, a brilliant man using his incredible intelligence to protect the world instead of ruling it, had finally stepped out of an old what-if comic and into the main Marvel universe. Even though Victor eventually slipped back into his old ways, we finally got to see that the greatest villain in Marvel really did have the potential to become one of its greatest heroes. Zorn is Magneto. One of the craziest X-Men fan theories ever turned out to be completely true, at least for a little while. When Grant Morrison introduced a mysterious new mutant named Zorn in New X-Men, readers instantly fell in love with him. Zorn was unlike anyone the X-Men had ever met. He claimed to have a tiny star trapped inside his head, forcing him to wear a large metal mask at all times to keep its incredible power under control. Despite looking intimidating, he was calm, wise, and deeply compassionate. He became a teacher at Xavier's school, mentored troubled young mutants, and even used his incredible abilities to repair Professor Xavier's damaged spine, allowing him to walk again. Still, plenty of fans couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. Zorn had appeared out of nowhere, wore a mask that conveniently hid his identity, and always seemed just a little too mysterious. Before long, one theory started spreading through the fanbase. What if Zorn was actually Magneto hiding in plain sight? Then came Planet X, and Marvel confirmed the theory in one of the biggest plot twists in X-Men history. During a confrontation with the X-Men, Zorn calmly reached up and removed his helmet. There was no glowing star underneath. Instead, everyone came face to face with Magneto. The revelation completely changed everything readers thought they knew. Magneto hadn't died during the destruction of Genosha after all. He had spent months secretly living among the X-Men, pretending to be their trusted friend while quietly learning their weaknesses. Even the miracle of healing Professor X had been part of the deception. Rather than using magical healing powers, Magneto had performed incredibly precise electromagnetic surgery to repair Xavier's nervous system. Suddenly, every scene featuring Zorn took on a completely different meaning. After revealing himself, Magneto launched one of the darkest attacks in modern X-Men history. He declared war on humanity, seized control of New York City, rounded up humans into prison camps, and unleashed chaos across the city. Grant Morrison portrayed him as a broken man, whose obsession with mutant superiority had completely consumed him. To make matters even worse, Magneto had become addicted to a mutant-enhancing drug called Kick, pushing his already unstable mind even further over the edge. One of the story's most shocking moments came when he killed Jean Grey by triggering a deadly electromagnetic stroke inside her brain. Watching Jean die pushed Wolverine beyond his breaking point. Logan charged forward and beheaded Magneto, bringing the story to an end. Fans never stopped talking about the twist, but Marvel quickly realized they had created a huge problem. Magneto had gone from being one of comics' most complex and sympathetic villains to someone responsible for mass murder, concentration camps, and the death of Jean Grey. On top of that, Wolverine had literally cut his head off, making it pretty difficult to continue using one of Marvel's biggest characters. Editorial decided to undo the entire storyline almost immediately. The official explanation became incredibly complicated. Marvel announced that Zorn had actually been a real mutant named Kwon Yin Zorn all along. A microscopic mutant organism called Sublime had manipulated his mind, convinced him he was Magneto, and even altered his appearance to resemble him. Later, Marvel introduced Zorn's twin brother, Shin Zorn, to make the situation even more confusing. Even though the reveal was eventually erased, fans who guessed that Zorn was secretly Magneto could still say they had been right. When Paul Robin first showed up in Amazing Spider-Man, something was off. he suddenly appeared living with Mary Jane after she had been trapped in another dimension, and Marvel acted like we were simply supposed to accept that she had moved on from Peter Parker. Paul barely talked, had zero personality, and nobody knew where he came from. Instead of seeing him as a normal civilian, readers started coming up with wild theories. Some believed he was secretly a villain in disguise, others thought he was working for Mephisto, while plenty of fans guessed he had some connection to the mysterious emissary who ruled the alternate world where MJ had been trapped. Almost nobody believed Paul was just an ordinary guy who happened to fall in love with Spider-Man's longtime soulmate. As the story continued, Marvel finally revealed that fans had been right to question him. Paul wasn't just some random survivor, after all. He turned out to be the biological son of Benjamin Rabban, also known as the Emissary, the fanatical villain responsible for destroying his entire Earth. Before everything fell apart, Paul worked as a scientist, researching quantum computation. He unknowingly helped his father decode ancient Mayan writings, believing they were unlocking some incredible scientific discoveries. Instead, those discoveries allowed Benjamin Rabban to summon a terrifying godlike force that wiped out billions of lives. Paul eventually realized the truth, fought against his own father, and even killed him. But the guilt of helping bring about the apocalypse never left him. Suddenly, the quiet guy standing next to MJ had one of the darkest backstories in modern Spider-Man comics. Things became even stranger when the truth about the children was finally revealed. Owen and Stephanie looked like ordinary kids that Paul and MJ had raised together during the 4 years they spent in the alternate world. They were a huge reason MJ chose to stay with Paul after returning home, since they had built a family together through years of surviving a nightmare. Then Marvel dropped another massive twist. The children had never actually existed. Benjamin had magically created them as part of a psychological trap designed to keep Paul and MJ emotionally attached to each other. As long as they believed they were raising a family, they would remain exactly where Rabban wanted them. Once his plan failed, both children literally disappeared into thin air, leaving Paul and MJ devastated by the realization that years of memories had been built around something that was never real. Even after all those shocking reveals, fans still couldn't stand Paul. Giving him a tragic origin and tying him to world-ending villain didn't erase the feeling that he had been created to keep Peter Parker and MJ apart. For years, readers had watched Marvel repeatedly split up one of comics' most famous couples, and Paul became the face of that frustration. Eventually, the relationship fell apart under the weight of everything they had been through, and Paul's story finally came to an end when the villain Torment killed him. Captain America is a Hydra agent. Steve Rogers had always been the ultimate symbol of heroism, freedom, and standing up against tyranny. He spent decades punching Nazis, fighting Hydra, and inspiring just about every hero in the Marvel Universe. The idea that he had secretly been working for the very organization he hated sounded completely absurd. If someone had suggested it before 2016, most comic fans would have laughed it off instantly. Then Marvel released Captain America Steve Rogers issue 1, and the final page became one of the most talked about moments in comic book history. Social media exploded with confusion, anger, and disbelief. Comic shops filled with readers trying to figure out whether Marvel had completely ruined one of its greatest heroes. Even people outside the comic book world started talking about it. News outlets covered the controversy, fans burned comic books in protest, and writer Nick Spencer received an unbelievable amount of backlash. What made everything even more shocking was Marvel's response. The company insisted this wasn't a clone, an evil twin, mind control, or some fake version of Captain America. According to Marvel, this really was Steve Rogers. That only made the mystery even bigger. The answer arrived over the following months, revealing that Steve's entire history had been secretly rewritten. The mastermind behind everything was none other than Red Skull, who had manipulated a sentient cosmic cube named Kobek. Because Kobek saw the world through the innocent eyes of a child, the Red Skull convinced her that Hydra was actually a force for peace and order. When Steve had grown old and lost his super soldier powers, Kobek used her reality warping abilities to restore him. At the same time, she unknowingly rewrote his entire life. In this new version of history, Steve was raised with Hydra's ideals from childhood, trained as one of their greatest agents, and secretly worked within America for years. This wasn't a brainwashed Captain America pretending to support Hydra. From his own perspective, Hydra had always been the right side, and that led directly into Secret Empire, where Hydra Captain America successfully took over the United States and came closer to victory than almost any Marvel villain before him. He trapped Earth's greatest heroes, manipulated the government, and ruled the country with frightening confidence. Of course, comic book fans never stopped believing the original Steve Rogers would eventually return, and they ended up being right once again. The real Captain America had been preserved inside Kobek's memories, waiting for the chance to come back. During the final battle, Kobek corrected her mistake and brought the original Steve into the real world, leading to an unforgettable showdown between the true Captain America and his Hydra counterpart. In the end, the classic Steve reclaimed his shield and restored everything to normal. For decades, the idea of Jane Foster becoming Thor sounded like one of those fun comic book what-if scenarios that would never actually happen. Jane had always been one of the most important people in Thor's life, but she was usually the doctor, the love interest, or the person waiting for Thor to return from another adventure. Back in What If, issue 10 in 1978, Marvel played around with the idea by asking a simple question. What if Jane had found Thor's hammer instead of Donald Blake? In that alternate timeline, Jane picked up the enchanted cane that transformed into Mjolnir and became Thordess, gaining all of Thor's incredible powers. She defeated the invading Stone Man and even helped save Asgard from Loki. Odin was so impressed by her courage that he eventually granted her immortality and made her a goddess. And over the years, some fans began wondering if Marvel would ever let Jane wield Mjolnir in the main universe. That theory started gaining serious attention in 2014 during the original Sin storyline. Thor Odinson suddenly found himself unable to lift Mjolnir after Nick Fury whispered a mysterious sentence into his ear. Gore was right, making him question whether he truly deserved to be a god. He dropped Mjolnir on the moon and nobody, not even Odin, could move it. So you start to wonder, if Thor couldn't lift the hammer anymore, who could? Plenty of names were thrown around, but Jane Foster quickly became one of the most popular predictions. She had always shown incredible courage, kindness, and selflessness, making many believe she possessed everything Mjolnir looked for in a worthy hero. Marvel ended up taking that theory in a direction nobody expected, and it turned Jane's story into one of the most emotional runs in modern comics. At the exact moment Mjolnir called out for a new champion, Jane was quietly fighting an aggressive form of breast cancer. She was going through chemotherapy, growing weaker every day, and facing the possibility that she might not survive. When she finally reached the hammer and lifted it, she transformed into the new mighty Thor. Suddenly she was healthy, powerful, and surrounded by crackling lightning. But every transformation came with a price. The magic flowing through Mjolnir completely cleansed her body of anything harmful. Unfortunately, it treated her chemotherapy as poison. Every single time Jane became Thor, the hammer erased all of her cancer treatment. She could save entire worlds as a goddess, only to return home as an even sicker human than before. Even knowing the cost, Jane never stopped answering the call whenever people needed Thor. She kept her identity secret for months, earned the respect of Asgard, and proved that being worthy had nothing to do with strange or birthright. Her greatest test came when the monstrous Mongok threatened to destroy everything. Jane knew one final transformation would almost certainly kill her, but she refused to stand by and watch innocent people die. She chained Mongok to Mjolnir and sent both flying into the sun, destroying the monster but leaving herself with no divine power to keep her alive. Jane died in Thor's arms after saving Asgard, but her sacrifice moved Odin and Thor so deeply that they brought her back to life using the power of the god Tempest. After recovering and finally defeating her cancer, Jane found a brand new purpose as the newest Valkyrie, guiding the souls of fallen heroes to Valhalla. If there is one Marvel fan theory that has basically become a law of comic books, it's this: Jean Grey isn't really dead. Every time Marvel announces her death, fans barely have time to feel sad before they start wondering how long it'll take for her to come back. It has happened so many times that you don't even ask if she'll return anymore. They ask how. The funny part is that this wasn't always the case. There was a time when Jean's death was meant to be one of the most heartbreaking and permanent moments in Marvel history. During the legendary Dark Phoenix saga, Jean sacrificed herself after realizing the incredible power of the Phoenix had become too dangerous. It was an emotional ending that was supposed to close the book on her story forever. A few years later, Marvel completely changed everything with one of the biggest retcons in comic book history. The company wanted to reunite the original X-Men for a brand new series called X-Factor, but there was one huge problem. Jean had destroyed an entire star system while under the influence of the Phoenix Force, and bringing her back without consequences would have been almost impossible. Marvel came up with a solution. The woman who became Dark Phoenix and died on the moon had never actually been the real Jean Grey. The Phoenix Force had secretly placed the real Jean inside a healing cocoon beneath Jamaica Bay, while creating a perfect copy with all of Jean's memories and personality. When the Avengers finally recovered the pod from the bottom of the ocean, the real Jean climbed out completely alive. That single story permanently changed how readers looked at every future Jean Grey death. From that point on, every time Jean died, fans immediately expected another resurrection. Her connection to the Phoenix Force made those expectations even stronger. After all, a phoenix is a mythical bird, famous for dying and rising from its own ashes. Marvel leaned into that symbolism over and over again. Jean died after Zorn attacked her with an electromagnetic strike. She returned once more when the Phoenix Force resurrected her during Phoenix in song. Jean actually begged Wolverine heroine to keep killing her over and over because each death helped her regain control of the Phoenix. Marvel eventually gave readers an in-universe explanation for why Jean always seems to come back. Her soul often returns to the White Hot Room, a realm connected directly to the Phoenix Force that exists outside space and time, and instead of reaching a final destination, Jean is basically waiting until the next story calls her back. Then the Krakoan era made things even crazier by turning resurrection into an everyday part of mutant life. Thanks to Cerebro backups and cloned bodies, Jean could die on a mission and be walking around again not long afterward. At that point, the old fan theory wasn't really a theory anymore. It had become one of the safest bets in all of comics. If Jean Grey dies, you know it's only a matter of time before she's soaring back into the Marvel Universe once again. What if Bruce Banner could stay in control while transformed into the Hulk? Instead of constantly switching between a genius scientist and a raging monster, why not combine both? The idea wasn't completely new either. Marvel actually explored it back in What If issue 2 in 1977. In that issue, Bruce transformed into a giant green Hulk without losing his intelligence. He still had all his scientific knowledge, worked alongside the Avengers, and became one of Earth's greatest heroes. It was a fun alternate universe story, but plenty of readers hoped Marvel would eventually bring the same idea into the main continuity. It was a fun alternate universe story. After all, having Bruce's brilliant mind combined with the Hulk's limitless range sounded like the perfect evolution of the character. And during Peter David's legendary run on The Incredible Hulk, instead of treating Bruce and the Hulk as simply a one-man changing into a monster, Peter David completely redefined how readers understood the character. He explained that Bruce's different Hulk forms represented different pieces of his fractured mind, shaped by years of childhood trauma and abuse. There wasn't just one Hulk living inside Bruce anymore. There was the gentle scientist Bruce Banner, the childlike savage Hulk who carried all of Bruce's anger and fear, and the street smart Grey Hulk, also known as Joe Fixit. Rather than having these personalities constantly fighting for control, Peter David built an entire story around the possibility that they could finally work together. That breakthrough came in The Incredible Hulk issue 377, when Doc Samson used hypnosis to force Bruce's fractured personalities to confront one another. Instead of competing for control, they finally accepted each other and merged into a single, balanced identity. The result became known as Professor Hulk. He looked like the massive green Hulk everyone recognized, but he spoke with Bruce Banner's intelligence and scientific knowledge, while also keeping the confidence and attitude of Joe Fixit. For the first time, fans got exactly what they had imagined for years: a Hulk who could solve scientific problems one minute and smash through buildings the next without losing control of himself. Jumping onto live action, after the events of Infinity War, Bruce stopped trying to get rid of Hulk and decided to embrace him instead. Over many months of gamma experiments, he finally fused his own mind with the Hulk's body, creating the version fans now call Smart Hulk. He could discuss advanced science, joke with the Avengers, wear glasses and a sweater, and still possess enough strength to wield the Infinity Gauntlet.